The 21st century has more than enough food for everyone. We imagine famine as a natural disaster, a drought, a failed monsoon, a plague of locusts, something we cannot stop, something we mourn but do not blame. But the hungers of our time are not born in the sky. They are built by hand, by policy, by wars and blockade. This is the story of man-made famines in the 21st century and the growing fear that the next one may not stay regional. It may be global. Start with Sudan, 2024 to present. The Rapid Support Forces didn't just fight a civil war. They deliberately blocked aid trucks at gunpoint. They destroyed water infrastructure. They burned grain silos. Famine conditions did not creep in on dry winds. They were escorted in by armed men. The UN and relief agencies said it clearly: starvation is being used as a weapon. Now look at Gaza, 2023 to present. Over 70% of crop fields destroyed, orchards uprooted, greenhouses shelled, border crossings choked to a trickle. When farmers cannot plant and aid cannot enter, hunger is not an accident. It is a predictable outcome of access denial. And when order collapses, even available food becomes unreachable. South Sudan, 2017, and again in 2020 to 2021. Civil war turned the world's youngest nation into a hunger emergency, not because the land failed, but because political instability destroyed livelihoods. Markets vanished. Livestock was stolen. Families ate water lilies to survive. Somalia, 2011 and 2017. Al-Shabaab blockades prevented aid from reaching starving populations. By the time the world paid attention, 250,000 people had already died, half of them children under 5. The famine was declared after most deaths had occurred. That is not a warning system, that is an epitaph. Yemen, 2016 to present. Economic warfare, food import disruption, blockades at sea and on land. The financial system collapsed, so even when food existed, no one could buy it. The UN called it the world's worst humanitarian crisis. But note the language: humanitarian implies a natural suffering. This was manufactured. Even without bombs, policy failures kill. Niger and the wider Sahel, 2005 and 2012. Early warnings were filed, reports were written, donors delayed, governments hesitated. Drought turned into catastrophe only because inaction was the real weather. A natural dry spell became a man-made famine the moment institutions chose to wait. And now, the fear. Conflict with Iran, whether open war or prolonged threat, raises one terrible possibility: disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. Not just oil prices, fertilizer, diesel for tractors, wheat ships from Ukraine and Russia and Australia. Disrupt that strait for 30 days, and food systems from Egypt to Bangladesh to East Africa feel the seizure. Prices spike, planting seasons fail. The global food system, already fragile, cracks. This is how a regional famine becomes a global one, not through one bomb, through a broken supply chain. Now let me be clear, because nuance matters. It is false and reckless to claim that any single country or any single set of sanctions is responsible for all famines. Civil wars cause hunger, armed groups cause hunger, corruption, drought, logistics breakdowns, and local political failures cause hunger. Blaming one capital city for every empty stomach is not justice, it is a cartoon. But denying that blockades, sanctions, and military actions amplify hunger is also a lie. The truth sits in the middle. Famines are almost always multi-causal, and one of those causes is almost always human choice. So let me give you the pattern, the fingerprint of man-made famine. Aid blocked, fields destroyed, farmers unable to plant, markets severed. Then the world says, how tragic. But tragedy implies accident. This is not accident. It is a series of decisions made by people with power, and decisions can be unmade. The next famine may not have a name you recognize. It may not stay inside one border. So when you hear famine declared, ask three things. Who blocked the road? Who burned the field? Who closed the crossing? Because hunger in the 21st century is not an act of God. It is an act of man. Why everyone blame America? Behind every major famine of the 21st century, the same American footprint appears. First, the bombs fall, whether directly over Yemen, Iraq, and Somalia, or through proxies armed and refueled by Washington. Then comes the blockade, economic strangulation justified as counterterrorism or sanctions policy, but functioning as collective punishment. Only then does the world acknowledge the inevitable famine declared, malnutrition charts spiking. In the past, Washington would send some aid as a fig leaf, a belated acknowledgement of the suffering its policies helped create. But that era has ended. USAID, once the hollowed-out symbol of American humanitarianism, has been systematically dismantled. The $230 million Gaza pier operated for just 20 days. The 500 tons of nutritional biscuits for Sudan were destroyed in a Dubai warehouse, burned rather than delivered. The peanut paste order for Yemen's starving children was cancelled outright. The pattern is complete: destroy, starve, document, and abandon. Subscribe for more deep realities. Comment, what would you add to this list?